Hi, and welcome back to 23 Days of Astrology with Marjorie Cottrell. Today we will talk about the moon through the houses, specifically houses 4, 5, and 6. Yet the last video I did, day 11, was where we explored houses 1, 2, and 3, if you missed that one. So let's see. Just a brief little reminder that when we talk about the moon and its location in the birth chart, we want to keep in mind that the moon likes to be in the sign of Cancer. When it's not in the sign of Cancer, we can draw an imaginary line from wherever it is in the chart to wherever the sign of Cancer is, and then we can merge those house topics. And also in the last video, day 11, I kind of touched on the condition of planets in signs. So if you wanted to review any of this information, you could pause the video or go back and listen to that one. So today, the first example that I have for you is the moon in the 4th house. So this is one of my favorite sample charts that I continually reference of writer and Nobel Prize winning author Pearl S. Buck. Her chart shows us that she doesn't only have the moon in the 4th house, but she has a cluster of planets or a stellium. But let's just talk about the moon in the 4th house, no matter what chart we're looking at. So if we know that the moon in ancient astrology, that the moon points to the environment or the setting of the life, and actually this is a good time. I wanted to share a quote with you by Chani Nicholas. I think I heard this on the astrology podcast. When she was speaking about the moon, she said, "The moon is how we unpack our giant purpose in the nitty-gritty work of daily life." I loved that. So I wanted to share that here. So you can kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about the environment of someone's life through the symbolism of the moon in their birth chart. So if the moon is in the 4th house, we know that the topics of the 4th house include our roots, our family, our foundation. This is also a place that would point to like introspection and our inner life, this inner well, almost like a stream underneath of us that feeds us in a way that isn't very visible. It's foundational. And people that might have a moon in the 4th house may be known to be the keeper of their family stories, interested in exploring their heritage, or looking up on ancestry.com and learning about their root system and what they're built upon. So then in this example chart, we see Pearl S. Buck's moon is down here in the 4th house of Cancer. Okay, so we know that the moon is empowered or at home in the sign of Cancer, as we talked about in the Pearl S. Buck video. I'm not sure what day that was. It might have been day 2 when I really got into her chart in depth. So we know that Pearl S. Buck was a writer. We also know that home was very important to her. Not only the topics of home, where she expressed her creativity, she wrote from home. She was also a sculptor. She was a loving, nurturing woman who cared for many children through adoption, and she started her own adoption agency called Welcome House inside of her home. So this is somebody who saw the beauty of, really making the home environment somewhere that is nurturing and supportive. And we can see a lot of that through this empowered moon down in her 4th house of home and family. There's much more to say about that, but just to keep it brief, we'll move on to my next example. This is a mystery client chart showing the moon in the 5th house. So somebody who has the moon in the 5th house may be somebody who is into creativity, whether it's creative expression or maybe even just crafting, or maybe actually being an artist. There's a creative theme that runs through the 5th house. Artistic endeavors would definitely be found here. And this is a place that also points to mothering, either your mothering style, or maybe even with the moon here, how you were mothered or how you were nurtured. So a moon in the 5th house that is strongly placed could point to a fun, playful, mother who was there, maybe like making up games when you were kids or like doing fun, adventurous outings. Or we're pointing to your own mothering style or how you care for or nurture others in your life, this could be a fun, playful location because the fifth house is a playful place. And then with the moon there, if it's not, in the sign of Scorpio or another challenged sign that the moon doesn't love to be in, it could point to playfulness, creativity, freedom comes to mind with our example here that we see Sagittarius in the fifth house. So if I had a client and this was their chart or something similar like this, I would say, I recommend asking yourself, how do I create a pleasurable daily environment? What's important to you? What are the ingredients to craft and create a pleasurable daily environment? That's something that feels really interesting for a placement like this and a moon in the fifth house. The last thing I'll say about this client is indeed someone who is creative. They had worked in graphic design for some time as a creative career, is playful and creative in their mothering, and also um, not only graphic design, but then later on interior design, really skilled at knowing what looks good inside of the home and knowing what to source and how to bring their vision to life. We also see Jupiter here with the moon in this particular example. So in the fire sign of Sag. So this is somebody with like a lot of creative ideas, kind of like explosive creative ideas that really that they're really passionate about and have the drive to bring to fruition. And then the last example that I have today is the moon in the sixth house. So we know that the sixth house is a place that is not a ton of fun. This is a challenging placement in the chart, but one that we all have a sixth house in our chart. So when we think of the sixth house, we think of service. We think of providing for others. I also think of advocacy and chronic dealings, whether it is caring for somebody who has chronic pain issues or chronic health issues or handling them yourself. I am not saying that if you have sixth house placements, you will have a chronic illness or care for somebody that is. That is not what I'm saying. But I am saying that it's not unusual to deal with certain things when placements can point to that in the sixth house. So this is the chart of Stephen King, the famed gory author. And I do not love violence or gore. So I do not read his books. However, my husband is a fan, and my astrology teacher, Adam, often referenced that Adam is also a writer, and as am I, and he often referenced this book on writing by Stephen King. So because it was a book about writing and not gore, I decided to read it. It was so hilarious and interesting and insightful. So a couple of things. Stephen King is okay. So we have the sixth house moon here. It is not a secret. He talks a lot about it in this book that he dealt with drug and alcohol issues for a lot of his life. And the moon in the sixth in the sign of Sagittarius. So this would point to his chronic dealings with overindulgence, wanting to be free, mental situations that are seeking freedom and moving towards that escape through the use of drugs and alcohol. So that's how this kind of showed up for him at one point in his life. One of the things that I think was really interesting that King talks to a lot in this book, and it almost feels like subtle. Like I don't think he's setting out to discuss this topic as much as he does, but he really goes into the burden he felt to care for his mother when he was younger and his family who, lived in poverty when he first started writing and he was a young married dad and teacher. And you really feel this, like it really stuck out to me, the duty and the call to serve, the call to provide for his family. And I really feel like that is a lot of his sixth house moon story here shining through. Um, that was an interesting thing to witness as I was reading the story. And I don't know if he was really intending to share it in that way, but it really stuck out to me. And the other thing with this sixth house moon and the sign of Sagittarius is like a playful ability to get through the mundaneness of life. That's what I think is one of his super strengths. Like if you go on Stephen King's website, he has just like really funny random bits of information, like frequently asked questions, and they're so hilarious if you read them. And the last one is like, are you dead? And he's like, no, I'm not. And it's just very interesting the way that he comes at like the monotony of life in this very playful yet gory, interesting way. So that is my final example for a sun in the sixth house. Um, okay, technical difficulties. So next up, we will have houses 7, 8, and 9, and we'll explore some sample charts or talk a little bit about what it's like to have the moon through those houses. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.